All right, so today on the Tailored Healing Collective podcast, we have someone that I got the pleasure of meeting earlier this year, someone who is walking in ancient priestess codes, who has walked through, I say, through the valley between death, rebirth, and awakening. And I'm so proud to have her here on the show today to discuss a little bit about what real priesthood is, especially in the world of AI. So, Sylvie, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
My goodness. Thank you for having me, Taylor. Thank you so much for this opportunity just to use my voice. And, I always want to say that when I say yes to doing things like this, my biggest intention is always to, um, you know, have the words land at the altar of the heart for those who need to hear it so that it can, however it needs to support their journey in this life that we're living here today. But yeah, I'll definitely introduce myself. Thank you. So my name is Sylvie. That's my birth name. Some people call me Selvia. And essentially, I mean, I'm a human being. Yeah, I always go there right away because I think that is so important. We often get so lost in titles and roles and all these things. And as much as they all play a really, vital aspect of the experience. I am human. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And those are my priority roles right now before I do anything else, right? In my service work. But yeah, I am an initiated and legally ordained priestess. Now, a lot of people may not understand what that is, and of course, I know we're going to unravel that in many ways. When I say the word priestess, I am not this has really nothing to do with any form of dogmatic, hierarchical type, religious type thing. I just want to make that clear. Okay, this is really a devotional path to spirit in all the ways that we experience it. It's just one thing, right? So as priestess, that is how I serve spirit as priestess. And before I was priestess, I spent, my gosh, what, like 17 or 18 years in covert federal federal policing, right? Government intelligence. Yeah, that was, again, I can get into that as well. So there's like two worlds just in this life that I have, really been able to deepen into. And then, of course, the entire spectrum of walking those worlds and everywhere it's brought me. Yeah, so I do psycho spiritual counseling. I'm certified in that for those who, and I say this with as much love and respect, those who need to hear certifications, but just like certified in psycho-spiritual counseling, certified in shamanic breath work. I've walked a shamanic path for a very long time, apprenticed with elders, all the things, a ceremonialist. I can go on and on. I serve spirit. So it's very diverse, very diverse.
Well, first of all, wow, even though I've already met with Sylvie many times before, what I can say is one of the first things that took me back is working in something parallel but completely opposite to what you do now. And I think that's going to first off take a lot of people back because they're going to say, how did you move from like one section of life like this? It's so intense to moving into this. But one thing like I really want to focus on today is that like this divine intelligence that you're working with was something that you were already operating in within a more controlled field. How did it feel to step first from that kind of area in life into something that is more uncontrolled, more fluid, more in tune with nature versus, the replica that we live through in this everyday life? Tell us more about that.
Wow, wow, thank you. That's a loaded question. It's very multi-layered and multi-dimensional. I'm going to do my best to try to answer that. But I from this point, I say from this vantage point of where I'm sitting currently, present time, looking back, I can say with so much certainty that every experience throughout our life, whether that is painful, traumatic, all the things, it is perfectly designed. And I know that's going to, set people off sometimes, but just it really is perfectly designed. And when I chose to get into federal policing, all the things in my very early 20s. I was getting into that because I really believed I could help people. I've always had the thread of service like weaved deeply into my being, right? Into my soul. And I always like to say that I've always been a fairly consciously unconscious person until, I think we all are to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've always been very much open-minded, open to um, people's different ways of believing things, right? Even though I grew up very Roman Catholic and a Sicilian family and all the things, I still was always very open-minded. So I got into policing, and of course, it's very systemic. It's very systemic. And I know that we could probably do a whole other podcast on just that piece right there.
Definitely.
But it was the fertile training ground, truly, for me to experience and live through and evolve through, right? That led me to really seeing the depths of, I would like to say, and I don't like to use the word darkness because darkness is not a bad thing, but just to put into perspective for, like, just to really see the shadows of the system, to walk those underworlds of the system, right? A lot of the illusions of the system. And, it took many, many experiences, many awakenings, even in that 7 to 18 years that I was in it. Um, but what I always had at the core was a willingness to evolve, a willingness to learn, a willingness to do better myself, um, heal myself. I suffered through very, very complex post-traumatic stress, compounded, complex, all the things, all the diagnoses you can. I had it. I had it. And so many people say, well, you signed up for that shit. Like, yeah, you sign up for it, but you don't actually know what you sign up for. Like, you don't realize until you experience the things. Like, you have an idea, but you don't ever really know how you're going to actually react or not react to the things. So it was just by choice, consistent choice of wanting to heal, right, through a lot of that. That really opened up the path and helped me really see, again, just those deeper illusions of, and again, I don't even want to use the word patriarchal. And if I'm going to use that word, I don't mean it in a way to put down men whatsoever, because women and men both, and I say this all the time, men and women both have suffered at the hands of that patriarchal systemic illusion. Okay, and so it's not just about the men here; it's about all of us. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, I don't know if like this is answering the question exactly because
No,
I
no,
mean I
you
can go in so
are.
many places, but yeah.
One thing that you just said kind of took me back a minute when you were talking about being in this kind of position where you're given a life, you're given a job, you're given a career, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into, but you're still like kind of offering yourself up as this vessel. I feel like that's directly connected to your priesthood work because even
Oh,
in this, like when we interact with becoming a vessel for other people to channel the divine in whatever way that may be, you are literally becoming this entryway, and it seems like all cute and pretty, like, oh, it's just flowy dresses and good vibes. And half the time we're going ego death after ego death after ego death over and over just to be a channel for other people. So like, can you kind of walk us through the moment where you started experiencing that on the other side?
yeah, I mean this, and again, it was how would I say, it was a very titrated, cumulative journey. And this is so very true. And I think I just want to say that it wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years ago where I really started to see the parallels. Because for the longest time I was like, I don't get it. Like, this is where it led me, and that's it. But let me speak to, the kinds of jobs that I did in, like, federal police and government intelligence, things like this. I worked undercover for years. I not only worked undercover, but, human intelligence, all of the things under the umbrella of national security. And again, lent to the military, for certain jobs overseas, going into different countries that were, conflict rich environments. And like I say all the time, I was like really, truly boots on the ground, walking the underbelly of the planet in many, many ways. And so this is truly the underworld. And there's a callousing that occurs, really when that starts to happen. And so being a vessel for, let's say, the tasks of like the government is one thing, right? And you're walking this path as you're on this healing journey, and you're constantly like awakening, you're expanding your consciousness, you're seeing things much different, your perspective is expanding. Sight, like literal sight, like third eye, mind's eye is like starting to get really wide open. And so you start really seeing all of those deceptions. And then, like there's a whole process you go through. Like there was so much grief. There was so much grief in it. It's like, oh, here I am thinking I'm getting into this thing to help people because it's like threaded into my soul. And then it's like, wow, I'm not really helping very many people. I'm, really just helping the powers that be do what they do. And that was really out of alignment with me. It took me 2 years of unraveling identity. Okay. Like this is the key thing, is that it took me years to dissolve various aspects of identity. And when I say that, I don't mean killing my ego. I love my ego. Okay. Like we have to just be aware of ego. We are meant to have an ego. Ego is here to help us like evolve and stay safe, like in many ways. Okay. But this is identity. And really what I attribute identity to are a lot of the imprinted values and beliefs and programs, right, that are bestowed upon us from the time that we are just like really little, right? And then we develop that. And then at one point, you have, your first grand awakening, your first big dark night of the soul. All the things start to happen. And I had many of those throughout the years, many of those on that journey. And so really the cherry on top was when my entire body was like, I was getting sick. I was getting physically sick because my soul values, so those values that, Sylvie as a soul came here incarnated with, that got sort of like oppressed, suppressed, and armored up throughout, a lifetime. And then especially through that, like, deeper training and systemic training and all the things. Well, that starts to conflict, right? And that becomes like major emotional distress. That becomes anxiety. That becomes depression. That becomes like so many different things and ways that it expresses. But then my body started getting sick. And I had to make some serious decisions and be like, okay, well, clearly everything that I am seeing at that current time was horribly corrupted, out of alignment with my values, with my morals. And I was like, no. And I really had to make a decision. And, I let go of an entire life, a really good paying job, a pension, like all of the things that come along with the what I say, the sexy painting of like what it means to like, do this work. Yeah. And then that really led me into, because I had also been on a shamanic path. Like even while I was healing, while I was doing all the healing and stuff like this, I was still apprenticing and doing other certifications and like all of these things. So it was almost like I was doing like a triple cover. It's like, I was like a shamanic apprentice, and then I was undercover, and I was a cop, and I was like all of these things. And I was like, okay, well, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you? Right? I had to really listen to my soul, and that led me into that. So yeah.
So for those people who don't know, because we always have new listeners on the podcast, Can you tell us your description of what the underworld is? Because I feel like when people hear underworld, they'll think of like the first TV show they've seen that mentions the underworld, or they'll go straight to like, I don't know, the craziest thing they've ever heard. I think there needs to be like a clear description of what it means to walk the underworld path, because the term is used so freely, but I feel like it's not
Yeah.
very well understood or comprehended by a lot of people. So how would you describe this to someone who like has no clue what you're talking about when you say the underworld?
Yeah, the underworld. Well, for me, we have, again, I can say the underworld. And the way I like to look at it is that there are different expressions of the underworld as well. There's like almost even different dimensions of the underworld. I don't want to get too crazy here, but basically the underworld is, the subconscious unconscious. The underworld sometimes is actually not all bad. Okay. So it's just like sometimes it's what's been oppressed, what's been suppressed, what hasn't been witnessed, what's been casted away. Other times it really is, um, I often say that we find a lot of truth in the underworld, right? We find a lot of truth in the shadow. And yeah, like I think that's probably just like the best sort of like scratching the surface of like the underworld. Like, you know what I mean? We go into the underworld to literally like, we have this whole, I mean, there's so many stories, so many like, Inanna and the underworld, all the things. And like, but like we literally go there to dissolve those parts of us, to reclaim the true parts of us, right? Um, we see what's underneath a lot of the synthetic, a lot of the glossy, a lot of the pretty, right? And we get under there and we're like, oh, so yeah, wait a minute, we've got some raw truth here. You know what I mean? Yeah, I
Very
don't know,
nice.
I'm just saying it like that because I don't want it to be like this. It's not, and it can feel scary for a lot of people because a lot of people are not willing to meet those parts of themselves, right? So that's like the scary thing, right? So yeah.
I think it's also scary because of the way it is typically portrayed in media. Like, I remember the first time I was telling someone about the underworld, and they're like in Hercules, the Disney movie. And so the first thing they're thinking of is a guy with flaming hair rowing a boat, across dead souls. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
like, make this a very tangible concept. And we're talking about like what the soul actually is and what this is representing. Because even, throughout different mythologies, we've seen what this means to walk amongst the dead. And if you say
Yeah.
that, they're like, well, I see somebody walking around living, but are they truly living? So one of the next questions I kind of wanted to get in with you is like when you've gone through your initiations, and you're helping a new soul, someone who may not necessarily like know what they're releasing yet. Do you feel when you were saying something earlier about being in the dark and being able to see, do you feel like you've learned how to process walking in the dark better now than
Mm.
you understood before?
My goodness, 100% yes. When I was mentioning that those 17 years were like that fertile training ground, right? When I finally had the deeper aha moment of the parallels between priestess hood and undercover work or like the oracle, the oracular arts, and like like working undercover, like behind the scenes, like all these things. I mean, there's so many parallels. And yeah, I mean, I can go into this, but essentially for me, and when I just want everybody to understand that this was my particular journey. And I'm not telling everybody that if you are want to, come into your oracular skills that you need to go and do the things I did. Like that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying this was my particular journey. This is how, again, my soul contracted for this. And what's interesting is when I reflect back on some of the experiences that I had, and I mean, I can even get into some different stories, which are pretty cool, really. Um, it's so clear now what was actually happening in terms of how a lot of my, sight, or like I call it the clairs, right? Like your your clairsentience, your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, all of these things were being trained, right? I'm like, as an undercover, like number one, you've got to have pretty damn good discernment, right? You've got to learn verbal judo. You've like, I mean, some people are like, oh, you were a spy. And I'm like, well, sure, but there's very particular skill sets, right, that one develops when you're doing that kind of work that literally translate into priestesshood and like what we actually um I say what we dance with, or what we're able to see when we're actually working with others. So body language, I see what isn't said, right? Like you don't even need, and I can see just the way like you're moving or the way you're breathing, like what energy's moving. And this was all part of the training, right? And it's just like, oh, and when I came into like my initiations as priestess and working with my elders and all the things, it felt so familiar. Obviously, because we're also talking lifetimes, but it also felt so natural to be sitting in these spaces, in ceremonial spaces, working with different energetics, being able to see and feel into different energies that were, you know, in the space, right? Um, yeah, so many things. I mean, so many things I can get into in this. I mean, we'd be here for 3 hours. So just
We might have
yeah.
to make a dual episode.
Yeah.
One of the things I find fascinating personally, though, is the fact that they can scout out people who have high amounts of emotional intelligence and discernment. And because like there's been a crossover in time between like organized government organizations and then, living in a world that's more spiritual, where is like even the gap at this point between ancient temples and priesthood and modern day, government technology and checking in on people? But I say all that to say that it's almost as though they recognize this priestess ability and just name it something else. Because to have that high level of discernment and be able to see beyond the veil is a skill. It is a very well-trained skill at that. And I find it also fascinating how when you look at the two, you look at a priestess and you look at someone who works in covert operations, there's really not that big of a line between the two. It's really about honoring the original source versus like mimicking it. Because in order to gain, that kind of power, you would have to mimic where it came from in the first place. So one of the things like you and I have also talked about, especially like with the coming of technology and dependency on it, do you believe that we're in a modern recreation of ancient temples and priesthood now that they're digital, or do you believe like they're solely here still in spirit, but they're just trying to be repurposed? How do you feel about that?
Oh, this is huge. This is huge. Okay, so first let me just say, when we refer to they, let's establish this. When we refer to they, um, what I refer to simply are, the powers that be, that really are, you know, are perpetuating control and fear for the purpose of, their longevity, really, and more so, how can I say they run a very synthetic system. Matrix. Let's use the word matrix because we
I don't
like that
even
word.
know who they is. I say there's
Yeah,
too many theys to try to
there's
put
too
they in a
many.
group.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. But I mean, and I, I don't know if we want to go there. Like, I mean, I have gone down every rabbit hole. Okay. I believe anyway. I've gone places where there are no maps. Okay. So let me just make that clear. So we can go real deep, but essentially, if you want to just say that there is essentially, like there's a synthetic matrix and then there's an organic matrix, right? And matrix isn't bad. Okay. It means mother, matter. It is a space of creation. Like, but then the question becomes, what are you creating? Are
Mhm.
you perpetuating and creating more synthetic that leads to the disconnect with it, like major disconnect within a human being. And when I say disconnect, I mean not only connection to self, but connection to original source, right? Or are you, really tethered into the organic matrix where it is an organic ecosystem and we are of nature, we are nature, right? So there's all of this. So, there's overlays. So if you can imagine that this like synthetic matrix is like overlaid onto the organic, and so many people within this organic are like starting to wake up. We're starting to wake up. We're like, oh my God, we've been part of this synthetic system for the purpose of all of the things, immortality versus eternal life. And like, I mean, we can get into all of the things like cosmic, not like whatever, right? But basically, both, like when I say they also know the game. They understand alchemy,
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They use what was original and sacred, and they've inverted that, right? To perpetuate their dominance, their like financial dominance, their everything dominance, right? So, of course, they understand temple arts. They understand temple consciousness. They know how to create temples and replicate them synthetically. In fact, I mean, we can go back throughout time and history in all the ways of how some of these systemic organizations like religion, religious forces, all these like came in to the temples. And like, I mean, we see them in Egypt all the time. Like you go in and like hieroglyphs have been like purposely removed off the walls because they don't want you to have access to that ancient wisdom, right? That they have now, like in their, control to manipulate the things. So, and I'm like just scratching the surface here, right? So I'm just trying to like tether in or thread into like the question. But I believe, I always believe that if you allow fear to take over, right, then it will take over. Original temples, right? Because you got to look at like they're micro and macrocosms. Like they're literally like it's very, again, another multi-layered thing. Like your body is a temple, your organs are a temple. Like the earth herself, Gaia, is a temple planet, right? And then within this planet, there are temples, seen and unseen, right? Energetic and matter, like all the things. So there came a time where they purposely, they, came in and purposely put caps on a lot of the very sacred energies that circulated in some of these sacred spaces. They tore down the temples and then inverted the templates, like literally the blueprints of these sacred places. Um, and we see it happen to this day in many different ways. Like, they may call something, an establishment, but they're actually using it as a temple, right? And what are they doing in that temple? Are they using it for high alchemy? Absolutely not. They're using it for denser, right? Alchemy, which some people refer to as black magic and all the things, right? But this is what I mean. And so, yeah, there's forces on all sides. Right? So,
It's funny too, before we spoke today, I was actually writing down some research I was doing about the Library of Alexandria and
mm,
Jeff Bezos' work with Alexa. And I was like, it's kind of funny, not really, but funny that you choose to name this library specifically that you're creating. You're taking this name of this ancient temple, and then you decide to make a little bitty machine that you give everybody in their homes that they ask any question that they want to in the world. And I'm like, wow, if the priestesses back then could see what's going on now, which we're
right.
we're still here and observing, but it's this feeling that the knowledge is lost. but it lives
Yeah.
in us and it lives in the work
Yeah.
that we do and how we spread that. And for you, what does spiritual truth look like for you in a world where this kind of knowledge is not only being capped, like you said, but gate kept with new
Mhm.
locks, with new encryption systems, and to kind of be someone who, through your spiritual work, you are also decoding, you are taking very layered information of the soul and the exposure that comes with it. And I can imagine even in doing covert work and studying, human intelligence, you see like every aspect of the way someone can emotionally withdraw or hold things in. So you must be also
Yeah.
noticing at the same time what's happening with people in tech and their reliance on like whether they're experiencing like a mother wound
Oof, my
or a
God.
father wound of some sort, but they're projecting it now through technology because they don't have like the sentience. They can't hold the sentience any longer to go speak to a therapist or go speak to a shaman or go speak to anyone who is experienced in walking that veil. So for you, what's one truth you feel like that has stayed consistent across timelines, even as languages have changed and encryption systems have been reloaded back into this matrix-like system or this non-organic womb that we're all living in right now?
Mm, gosh, there's so much in what you just said. Like, there's
I
so
know I
many
give
things.
such
I
loaded
want to
questions.
I just want to dig into all of it because there's so much. And like, okay, I'm going to try to answer the question first, and then I just want to go into some of these pieces because we have to give it context because, okay, let me just go with the question first. But one truth that has stayed consistent is truth. And I want to honor that truth is different for everyone, right? And two things can be true at the same time. I want to honor all of that. But that truth does take care of everything. Sometimes it just takes more time. So, so that is one thing. And, truth is organic. Like at the foundational level, it is tethered right into all creation, all source, right? And it's just, it gets expressed in all the different ways. But truth remains timeless. Uh, and I really want to touch on the piece around, you mentioned mother or father wound.
Yeah.
And I really believe, I know this is, I always like to say it all begins with the mother. And when we are so disconnected from self, from source, from root, from nature, and we're like really tethered in to the synthetic, it's literally because we are not rooted into mother. And when I say that, I don't just mean like our actual like mother, like, you know what I mean? I'm talking about like mother. And there's many layers of mother, primordial mother. There's, the feminine face of, we want to use God as the word, the Sophia, right? We're not tethered into that gnosis, to that wisdom that offers us the ability to actually have faith and trust in ourself. And hence, when we don't have faith or trust in ourselves, we outsource. We outsource for all the knowledge because we don't realize that we are the Akasha. Like our body, which really is nature, it is an aspect of feminine essence, even if you're a man, okay? The body, right? This temple holds all of the epigenetic memory since the beginning of evolution. It's in your water. It's in our waters. It's in our plasma field, right? That to be tapped into that requires practice and presence, to which most people no longer have because nervous system dysregulation. And like, again, what does the phone constantly do, takes us out, takes us out, takes us out, right? I'm not saying technology is bad. We have to learn, and we need to learn quick, right? How to get into right relationship with these tools and understand that they are tools, right? And we have to understand, we have to get into right relationship with our intentions with these tools. So I'm not saying it's bad, okay? I'm just saying it does require a lot of discernment, because once again, and I mean, I can just get into this whole thing. Once again, anything that leads you into artificial is removing you from the energy of yin. It's removing you from the essence of the feminine. It's removing you from that feminine aspect of God. It really is. Um, because it's removing you from nature. And again, I'm like, I really don't care to hear, because I'm like, just challenge me on this. And I'm like calling it out, because I'm like, I don't care to hear that, we can bridge our bodies with technology, and then, that be okay. Now, can it offer some pretty cool things in terms of like, you know, supporting health in different ways, and like maybe catching some, diseases, and I get all of that. But then we also have to look at like the medical system, where that got us, right? And again, it's like, because once we don't have that connection to the divine intelligence of our body. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Oh,
there's so much I can go
absolutely.
into there.
Oh, there's probably
Yeah.
gonna be a whole nother episode because I've been
Yeah.
especially when you were saying like I don't care to hear this, I'm like that's exactly what I mean with a lot of the work that I do myself and I teach, because I find it like so interesting when I'm looking into like government patents and documents. I'm like, they
Ugh.
really know that we're the source. Like they study
Yeah.
biogenetics, they study, our facial mannerisms. And then even when you mentioned Sophia, my mind initially went to wanting to talk about, because I don't have that much time left for this episode. I did want to talk to you about this too, because I thought you would have some wonderful insight on it. You spoke about Sophia, and my mind went straight to David Hansen and Hansen Robotics making this
Mm.
first female robot that was given citizenship in Saudi Arabia. And the fact that they named it Sophia, I thought was like, ha ha, a little funny. But the fact that they're trying to anchor this into feminine wisdom. And then I read several times that the makeup that they used, the facial expressions they used to create it, was supposed to be allegedly Nefertiti. So, with your work in Egypt, what do you think about them allegedly using her face
Mm-mm.
or a casting of her face in order to make this robot? What message do you think that says to the world?
Oh my God. This, and see, like right now, my body's like just in goosebumps. But immediately, and I just want, let me just walk you through the intelligence of body. You're literally speaking this, right? You're saying, and they named her Sophia Nefertiti, and like my entire body's going like this. Like I'm in an actual contraction, because my body knows truth before my mind. And for me, it's a no. No, because once again, what we are seeing, right, is an inversion and a distortion. You want to go play around with it, great, whatever. But, it's like, I'm going to say, I feel like I just saw this too. Was Trump not just saying something about like how we shouldn't be calling AI anymore, because it's so genius that it shouldn't even be called artificial? Guys, guys, like take an eagle eye view and look at all the ways, right? The drips, the drops, the like all the ways that they are removing you from source. We are source. The ancient Egyptians knew this. They knew this. They called it, right, the divine human for a reason. Raising the dead, raising like you are, like your spine, like we, all of the things, like we are a vessel for divine intelligence. The temples were built around this. We're tethered, when we are tethered into the cosmos, when, or like tethered into the sun is evolution, it's creation. You see, when we start tampering with creation and we start inverting it and we start impeding on it, or making it artificial, right? It's a very different kind of evolution. Actually, it stunts our actual potential, and it's creating potential for something that has no soul. And that is one of the biggest problems of the 52,000 year cycles that we go through. Okay, I'm just going to get into that, because it really is about immortality versus eternal. The soul is eternal. And I know I'm probably confusing a lot of people right now, because it's a really big topic. But if there is, one thing that women, I mean, just look at every single thing. You can go through all the witch hunts. You can go through, like, just all through what we know and all the things we don't know over time in history. What is the one thing that is always attacked, right? I say attacked, and I don't want to victimize anything. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, like, it's always about woman and womb. Womb is the matrix. Okay. Again, as within, so without, right? As above, so below. Like, our bodies are the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so as a woman, like, who literally is designed with this natural technology that is womb, that literally is the portal for life to come onto this planet and evolve, right? We don't, women don't understand how powerful that is, because it's been so oppressed and suppressed in all of the ways. And I'm not a feminist, because that too is a psyop. But basically, what I'm going to get into, what I'm just trying to say here is that, of course, they would do that with an artificial robot. Call it Sophia. I mean, it's all, there's symbols. I mean, you know this. I mean, this is what you do. It's like symbols, and right. It's like, this is what it is. It's spell casting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean,
It's
you
funny
can go,
too. Lately, because I broke my mug that I usually use when I do my oracle transmissions. And so I had like this blank space, and I was like, okay, I don't have my mug. What am I gonna do? And someone was like, just start using your hand mudras, the ones that you use during meditation. So I start using it immediately. I get accused of being a Mason. I get accused of being a part of secret
of course.
societies. I'm like, where do you think they get that from? Look at this
Exactly.
symbol I'm making with my hands. What does that look like to you? Why would they hold their hands
Yeah.
in that position? What do you think that means? Where did you come
Yeah.
from? And so,
Yeah.
again, I'm not a feminist either. It's understanding that when we're talking about feminine intelligence, we're not talking about an actual woman all of the time. We're talking about the source of creation in the void, because what is referred to as
Yeah.
the matrix has both. It has the masculine and the feminine, because the void needs structure in order to enter into the material realm. When we exit from our
Right.
those bodies and we're born here, you had to leave an enclosed space to enter into another one. So the way that you are able to describe, the portal entryway through these stories, and see like, okay, I'm aware and I recognize, and I am now a vessel for others to see that this knowledge here is eternal. This is the quantum immortality they're looking for. The the general expression that you have of these stories, however work people through the different ceremonies that they participate in with you, you are being that bridge, which may look similar to people when they're calling on Lord Chat GPT.
Oh God. Yeah.
I just have to laugh when I say it because I'm taking
I
it
know.
seriously. But it's like it's the divine comedy, because humans create things in their own image, not realizing that they are the
Absolutely
source. That they're the source
right.
of what they're looking for. So this desire to bring something outside of yourself can somewhat create this chaos, because you don't understand this is your mother's reflection. And when we're talking about mother, I mean, like, Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the reflection. So you have such a beautiful way of projecting that, and making people remember that, like, even if it's fierce and it comes like some people are not ready for it, it's necessary because this is a journey that you're taking people through. So, one of the last
Yeah.
questions I want to ask to close out, and we are going to probably have to do a dual episode if you'll agree to do one with me, because I want
Yes,
to
yes.
talk about Blue Lotus and Egypt as well, and
Mhm.
consciousness when it
Yeah.
comes to computers. One of the last questions I want to ask you is, what are you reclaiming right now in this next path as we enter into this very confusing time for a lot of people, but also seems to be very, very clear what you're here to do right now. What is your next step in reclaiming this path?
Yeah, that's again a really thank you. Big question because it's like, I feel like right now I'm very, very passionate about helping people to remember their humanity. Um, and that sounds like it's really simple, but in today's day and age, it's really not because we have been so programmed in so many ways. And so, like, what does it actually mean to be a human being, right? What is the divinity of that? And I don't mean some like silk and sage style, like, love and light way. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like raw human being, right? And so I have been reclaiming the return. I just pivoted, my service in a really different way. Like I've actually scaled back on so many things. The last 3 years have been have been just like a whirlwind of refining and really deeply, deeply coming into integrity in all the ways. And as like I have this role as priestess, right? I have an oath, which is again another parallel. Like, I took an oath when I like became a police officer, and it's like, oh, I wasn't serving and protecting. Okay. So it wasn't really like, but this is a very different oath as priestess. And for me, it's like, no, you know, I always say a lot of my, clients, they'll come to me and even before they come to me, they'll be like, okay, so like, what are we going to do? What are we going to learn? And it's like, well, you know what? We're going to learn how to be for one thing. Like, how are we going to be? Like, it's because it's through your being, right? That everything shifts. And most of all, I would have to say, it is about remembrance. It's all remembrance. Like, there's nothing to fix. You are not broken, right? You just need to remember who you are. And so I am reclaiming the return of the temple. It's like we get so lost in this day where we're like, we got to build the business and and it's like, no, 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 no. I'm not here to build a business. I'm not here to extract from the temple like the way they did to the Pythia, the way they did to like that's not like I'm building, this is the temple, right? So that's what am like really reclaiming. Um, and that's pretty radical, I have to say, in comparison to like what I've been seeing the wild, wild west out there and like the healing arts and the sacred
Oh
arts and like
gosh, yeah.
and it's just like, oh my God, right? Like simplicity. Like, can we come back to like real service here? Because we are at a threshold in humanity. Like it is by no mistake that I am here at this time, that we are all here at this time, right? I'm here to help you remember that. Why? Why are you here? You know?
You remind me of my own path and my journey too, because it is easy to get lost in it. Picking up a phone, for example, and channeling a transmission out there seems like it's just like it's what everybody does. We've been programmed into getting on social media and talking, but it takes like a special kind of discernment to understand that you are channeling the same way we see these images and depictions of what looks like a microphone or a staff or an alchemist staff, whatever they have
Yeah,
back then. And this is no different because the power is in your voice, what you say, how you carry your message, the way you're
absolutely.
using your vagus nerve. So I want to thank you so much for sharing today. Can you tell us how to find you so we can find out more about your work and in your writing, how people can learn how to work with you?
Thank you so much. Of course. Well, I do come with a little bit of a caution. I just want to say that because like when we are devoted to truth, like, I mean, it's a major path. It's not an easy path, put it that way. And so I always like to say before I, invite people into my world, it really is this field of dissolving those identities. And so it does feel very uncomfortable because what I stand for, it is the sovereign path. It really is. I'm not talking about like freedom. No, I'm talking about like this is the sovereign path. So yeah, you can find me on my website. It's www.intemana, Intemana.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn at Selvia Filteau. You can find me on Instagram at Priestess of the Blue Fire. And yeah, and what I have been really just finding so much joy in lately is coming home to my writing. And so you can find me on Substack. And it's my Substack is called my God, I was I'm like thinking of Priestess of the Blue Fire. No, it's field, it's like truth codes from the field. Sorry, yeah, truth codes from the field. That's my Substack. So you can find me there too. And those are like my deeper transmissions. And then it'll give you a sense of who I am, what I do, and yeah, if you're inclined to collaborate in any way, I'm open to always having that chat.
Absolutely. And we'll be sure to link all of Sylvie's links in the bio for the podcast. You'll be able to find it in the description link. But thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And I think that these conversations need to be continual because time is not stopping. I think there's this idea that all of a sudden things are going to stop and it's all going to collapse. But we're sitting here kind of like still spinning the wheels that were left behind for us to pass the baton and keep going
Yeah.
and keep leading and keep leaving the awareness of consciousness and spirit available for people. It's not something you have to pay for, something you have to go online to find. It's something that you can still meet with people in real time and use real medicine, real instruments, real vibrational pieces of energy to connect. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time today. I love
Thank
having you on
you.
here and speaking with you. Hopefully we can bring you back for another episode.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really am honored. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. And this has been another episode of the Tailored Healing Collective podcast. And we will see each other again soon.